series, NAJAS Share. And this is an occasional series of webinars that we started up last November with the idea of bringing the network together. Our 38 societies get together but once a year for our annual meeting. And this is a means to get together and share best practices and insights from around the network. And secondly, to bring in good partners and friends from the outside to make sure we're in touch with trends and opportunities in U.S.-Japan relations. So this covers both of those features, because we're going to have a good back and forth about practices and learn new from some really good partners joining us on this call. And our speakers in the order that I hope that you can hear from them are Kurt Cottle, Carlo Capua, and Dimitri Lorenzen. And that information is on your flyer, and I'll introduce them a little bit further in just a moment. But again, this series was begun back last November, and it's no accident that we're coming back already to the topic we hit on our very first session with a couple of our participants, Dave Carpenter, the president of Japan America Society Kentucky, and Amy Sue, who's his partner in crime in Kentucky. And they kicked us off with an overview of how Japan America societies can organize optimally in a very mission consistent way that also can support the bottom lines of our all nonprofit, often volunteer societies from the revenue from leading group travel to Japan. So we're really glad that they're on the line and they can be part of that best practice sharing. Other topics that we touched on were baseball diplomacy. Ryan was a big part of a discussion we had on using sake in promotions. So we now come back to travel and tourism. And this is indeed a super hot and trending topic. In fact, it is the topic of the year. And Kurt will be getting us into that, how that came to be in a formal sense. And I think that there's just an awful lot of promise for this topic at any time, but especially in this year. So the format that I'd like to have us work through is to have three presenters in turn talk for about 10 minutes on their perspective, their role on travel and tourism in this year and cultural exchange. Then, if we can, I'd love to have just the three of them have a few minutes to question one another if it stimulates, brings up any synergies. So a little crosstalk from the three presenters, and then open it up to your question and information and exchange of views. As you heard from the announcement, we are recording this call because we want to make it available to more than the dozen or so we've collected live through these various time zones. So the recording will be posted to our YouTube channel, and we'll make sure we circulate that with even more efficiency than we circulated the Zoom registration. So if that's an acceptable format, let's jump into it. And it's my real pleasure to then bring on as our first speaker, Mr. Kurt Cottle. Kurt's I'm a former Commerce colleague of Kurt's. He is the senior policy advisor in the policy planning section of the National Travel and Tourism Office. It's gone through many names over the years. That is part of the industry and analysis group at the Commerce Department. So these are the folks who become sectoral experts and follow the sector and support the domestic and overseas network in promoting activities. So Kurt's the man on the strategic front for travel and tourism. And a very special year. Kurt, can I turn the floor over to you, please?
Sure. Let me. All right. Now let me. Can everybody see it?
Yep.
All right, great. every system is different. I apologize. So we're talking about the U.S.-Japan tourism year. Just to give you a quick overview, the purpose of the year is to strengthen the bilateral relationship on travel and tourism between our two countries. Japan historically has been a very important trade partner. Before COVID, it was over 3 million, in terms of visitation. And then COVID happened, and Japan has been slowly rebuilding in terms of market share. And so this year will help us strengthen our tourism numbers in both directions. People visiting Japan has come back a little stronger than Japanese visiting the United States. But the opportunity is to get more numbers on both sides and to deepen those ties on the Japan side. We're working with the Japan Tourism Agency, the Japan National Tourism Organization, JATA, and the Council for Local Authorities. Here in the United States, it's the Department of Commerce, both the National Travel and Tourism Office and the U.S. Commercial Service, both in the U.S. and in Japan, and the Department of the State, the embassy team, and Brand USA. And this picture is from the signing. Rahm Emanuel hosted the signing after Thanksgiving at the residence, and has been a huge champion of the program. In fact, the signing received 3 ministers from Japan, in addition to the Minister of Land Transport, Travel and Tourism. The digital minister and the justice minister attended because as a policy part of the tourism year, there's strengthening along global entry between the two countries. It has been a pilot for years, but they're laying the groundwork to make that a much more formal and a robust program. So that's all exciting for everyone. The sort of way to think about the year is sort of like a clothes hanger or a clothesline, in terms of lots of different things being able to go up on it. So in addition to the signing ceremony, there will possibly be a closing event of some sort next April 2025, leading into World Expo in Osaka. We are having working group meetings and educational events tied to the major trade shows in each country. The upcoming IPW event in Los Angeles in May, and then the Tourism Expo event in Tokyo come September. Brand USA is committed to a more fulsome engagement along the Japan sales mission that will be happening this July. And there will be themed exchanges, sporting events, major conferences that are going on up through the period. One conference will be IGLTA's international conference, which will be in Osaka this fall. There's going to be activity, hopefully around sports, Major League Baseball being a good candidate. The Japan side has been working on that. And we will be working with industry DMOs, destination marketing organizations, to see what they have planned given the year. And importantly, there is a logo for folks to use with their programming and event. The link is on this slide, and it is come and go, self-service. So just feel free to pop it on. What we would ask is if you could let us know that you're using it so that we can keep track of it. That would be very helpful. So I'll stop sharing and turn it over to Carlo, and then happy to follow up with questions and other bits of information as requested. Carlo, off to you.
Thanks, Kurt.
If I could just butt in as
Go ahead.
to give a quick thank you very much, Kurt. And one thing I do know that we'd love to come back to you is discussions about engagement through the logo to be able to work on the
Certainly.
platform. Yeah, we look forward to that. And yes, I would love to. I didn't do much about presentation of our three distinguished speakers, so I really want to thank all three of them, and now turn to Carlo. Carlo Capua is the incoming chair of Sister Cities International. He also has a day job as the chief of strategy and innovation for the city of Fort Worth, Texas. He'll be introducing Sister Cities, but very quickly should be a group very near and dear to the hearts of both CIE and NAJAS and all our JAS. It's another national membership organization with a presence, I think, in what, Carlos, some 300 communities and a couple thousand relationships springing from those sister city ties. Goes back to the Eisenhower era and is a real pillar of these people-to-people connections, which have such a close linkage to the business of moving people in travel and tourism. Carlo has been tireless in his promotion of the year and in reaching out to our network. And so I'd like to turn it over to Carlo for his interjection and elucidation of what's happening with from the Sister City side on travel and tourism. Carlo?
Andy, you're a great hype man. Can you follow me around to all my virtual events? That was really great. Good morning, afternoon, and good evening, I think, to all of you. I'm Carlo Capua here. I'm here in the city of Fort Worth, Texas. You can see my Longhorn pin here. I'm the Chief of Strategy and Innovation for the city of Fort Worth, and I'm also the chair-elect for the National Board of Directors for Sister Cities International. We were founded. It's pretty cool when you can say your organization was founded by a former president. But back in 1956, President Eisenhower, who think about it, this is 1956. This is pretty much right after World War II. And President Eisenhower saw the worst of humanity. And he thought, we need to make sure that this never happens again. How do we do that? And he thought, we need to bring people together. Sometimes you can achieve more around a dinner table, hosting someone or having a meal, than around a large corporate boardroom or meeting with countries across the table from each other. So how can we get these people together? And that was really the genesis of the organization. To date, there are over 500 different member cities. And some cities, some smaller cities, maybe they only have one sister city. And some of the large ones like San Diego, California, Los Angeles, New York, they'll have 20 or 30 different sister cities. In Fort Worth, we have 9. And so the average is about 2 or 3. But, all in all, it's a global network of over 2,000 partnerships around the world in over 130 countries. And one of the cool things, and Japan is near and dear to my heart. I know many of you all, but since 1956, there have been over 460 just U.S.-Japan partnerships. I think there's 109 in California. Just in California, cities partner with Japanese cities, over 100, which is pretty remarkable. And so my connection with Japan happened when I was in college. I minored in Japanese, and I decided, when I was graduating, my Japanese professor said, Carlo, you have 2 options. If you want to continue studying Japanese, number 1, you can stay in Fort Worth and I can tutor you and you can keep learning. Or number 2, you can actually go to Japan and learn and live in the culture and practice it. And you can teach English there and study Japanese at the same time. And so I didn't have to think very hard. The idea of going to Japan, I'd studied there for a couple weeks in college, but the idea of going and living there was just amazing. So I went, and I was just going to go for 1 year, and 1 year turned into 2, and 2 years turned into 3, and 3 years turned into 4. And I have to say that what kept me there is that I just fell in love with the students. I was a JET English teacher, which I think many of you are familiar with. And this program changed my life. I was placed in our sister city of Nagaoka, Japan. Nagaoka and Fort Worth are sister cities. And from there, it sort of opened up my whole world. So here I am, 20 years later, about to take over as chair of the organization. It's a sincere honor. But more importantly is that the next 2 years, we're going to focus on, of all places, we're going to focus on Japan. That will be the focus area for Sister Cities International during my term as chair. And I'd love to share with all of you that for this will be our big event that we're planning, and you're all invited. This is the 2025 U.S.-Japan Sister Cities Summit. It will be in mid-September for 3 to 4 days. And, the reasons why we're doing this, there's a few different reasons. We're going to celebrate the 170th anniversary of formal diplomatic relations between Japan and the US. We also are going to push unpause on a lot of those relationships that are still on pause from COVID. You can imagine if you're a small town in the US, you're a small town in Japan, and your sister cities, you don't necessarily have a big budget. Since COVID, it's been really hard to travel. So we're encouraging our US friends to come to Japan and meet their Japanese sister city either at the summit or go travel after the summit and go see them in person and rejuvenate those relationships. We're also going to recognize some stakeholders and key volunteers who have been critical to the US-Japan binational relationship. And then don't forget about the next generation. We want to recruit and cultivate that next group of ambassadors and foreign service officers and board members and global citizens, especially those between the Japan and the US. Now, the question everyone's asking me is, where will it be? What city? Well, we are in final negotiations with a city in the Osaka area that you can see in there. We'll announce pretty soon, but I'll show you a couple of pictures. This is pretty exciting. This will be one of our opening receptions. This is the Guinness Book of World Records largest 360-degree LCD display. It is pretty awesome. I was just there a couple weeks ago checking it out, and we've got some really incredible things happening. Of course, partnering with Kurt and the Department of Commerce for the Year of Tourism is really exciting. We think that momentum will continue into 2025. And one of the big sells for doing this in Japan is that I don't know if you've looked at the exchange rate right now, but the dollar is at like a 40-year high against the yen. And so that means it's hard, two things, right? Number one, it's hard for our Japanese friends to travel to the US. But number two, it's a little easier maybe for us in the US to travel to Japan. So this is what we're seeing in Japan. When I was there 2 weeks ago, I think they officially entered a recession. So this is a chance for us to spend all of our dollars in Japan, in the host city, help the local economy. We're going to use as many local vendors for printing and design and website as much as we can to really make an impact in the local community that we select. And by the way, if you're not convinced yet, then stop by the World Expo. That will be part of our summit. We will take 1 day. We'll all go together to the expo. There's a giant USA pavilion. Here's a couple renderings of what the expo will look like. It will be on an island. There's a special man-made island that they're building the expo on, and a lot of those buildings you see are different pavilions for different countries. So when you go into the pavilion, it's a huge, like multi-million-dollar pavilion themed for different countries, where there'll be food, there'll be dance, there'll be dress, there'll be activities, and it's almost like a mini United Nations that you can go from door to door. So it's really fascinating. It's really pretty inexpensive too. It'll be only like $40 or $50 for a 1-day ticket. And so if you're looking at an amazing experience, consider coming to the expo and consider coming to our summit. Here's another cool rendering. This is going to be like the main pavilion. So it's pretty cool. We're going to be talking about the theme of resilience. As you know, when you have someone who you're friends with on the other side of the world, you see the news different. For example, in that first picture, you might recognize it. So I live in Fort Worth. Dallas is right down the street. Dallas is partnered with the city of Sendai. That's their sister city, which is right in the Fukushima area where the triple disaster happened back in 2011. So imagine you're living in Dallas and you're watching the news and you're seeing your sister city flood, you're seeing all that water come over. And so Dallas, they did not waste any time, and they raised $260,000 and sent it straight to their friends in Sendai. And I have a lot of other examples of how sometimes tragedy brings out the best in humanity, as evidenced by these types of partnerships. There's a great story about Crescent City, California, and Rikuzen Takata. That boat, that image in the middle, you see, that's actually a boat. That's a boat that used to be in Rikuzen Takata. When the tsunami hit, the boat just washed away and ended up landing like 6 months later in Crescent City on the coast of California. And the folks in California said, what is this boat? There are barnacles all over it. So they started to shave off the barnacles, and they found the name of the boat was Kamome. And so they did this huge, okay, where did this come from? Somebody could read it in California, saw it was Japanese. They eventually found the people in Rikuzen Takata, and the folks in Rikuzen Takata came over to Crescent City. They cleaned the boat up, they gave the boat back, and they actually ended up becoming sister cities. So it's an amazing story of resilience. And then, of course, we all know, I think our friend and Daniel, if you're in Honolulu, you're not too far from Maui. When the Maui wildfires started last year, their sister cities and friends in Japan really stepped up and helped out. So it's going to be a feel-good but relevant, meaningful conference to talk about why it's important to support each other, especially in times of tragedy. We're also, one other thing we realized is that for folks in Japan, there's not a real understanding of what it was like during World War II for the Japanese and Japanese Americans in the US. So we're going to have a deeper conversation about what that experience was like. We have some folks who are going to share their experience, especially for our young generation, because you all know the quote, you know, those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. So it's important that we tell the stories, we share the resilience, and these Japanese and Japanese Americans who were interned, I mean, they are the true heroes and the original citizen diplomats between the US and Japan. So lots of other things planned for this summit. Really excited to be on here and sharing this with you. Here's my contact information. If you are interested in more information about the summit, if you're interested in coming to the summit, we also will need panelists and speakers and sponsors and all the things connected to the summit. If you're going to be in Japan, we'd love for you to come. If you're going to be in the States, we'd love for you to travel. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Becky Callahan. She's on the call. She is our brand new executive director of the Japan American Society of Dallas-Fort Worth. And so I know she's excited to get plugged into this organization, and all of you great champions for building that bridge between the US and Japan. And so, Andy, with that, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Carlo. That was fantastic. Thank you for sharing the photos, the stories that are quite moving, all the energy that you bring to the space. If I'm the consummate promoter, you are the networker par excellence. If it has to do with Japan, if it has to do with grassroots exchange, if it has to do with Texas and innovation, Carlo is right at the heart of it. With Kurt, we wanted to come back to the logo. With you, we'd love to come back, maybe hear a little bit about where things stand with the Expo Ambassadors program, if you can share anything about that exciting potential opportunity, and also the calendar that we are working on. Geographically, there also seems to be a pattern here, and it seems to be redounding around Western Japan, as Carlo whet our appetite with the location of the Japan Summit and also the Expo. And you're going to hear about another important Western Japan connection in a moment. So we're working our way down the pyramid. We started with the binational view. What are the two governments doing in framing this year? Then we went on to a huge national organization in Sister Cities International, thanks to Carlo, and we heard just a big range of programming over multiple years. And now we're going to take a dive into what I'd say for this assembly is the narrowest enterprise, but perhaps one of the deepest and more profounder that we're going to talk about in terms of the way it affects lives, the way Carlo's life was affected by his Japan experience. And for that, we're turning to Mr. Dmitry Lorenzen. And Dmitry has, this is a great opportunity for me at NAJAS to be able to introduce the network to the incoming president of one of our really important partners, the Center for International Exchange, with a much longer name tied to that behind it. Dmitry came in as the president of this organization just at the beginning of this year. And that was timed with his relocation back to the States. We were lucky to catch him. He came back after about 16 years working in Tokyo. Like Carlo, he has a bit of a day job. He's a senior vice president at MetLife. So we're just delighted to have someone of this background step in. Our network is very familiar with retired Rear Admiral Jamie Kelly. So Dmitry has replaced Jamie as the president of the organization. So this will be an update on a program that most of the network knows about. And we also had a session with the Department of Commerce with Sister Cities just a week ago. But this is great, again, to make sure everybody is up to date on the organization, what's happening in 2024, what's happening beyond that. Dmitry, thanks very much for joining us, and meet a big part of the community that is really eager to support your work.
Thanks so much, Andrew, and it's a pleasure to be here and talk to you along with Kurt and Carlo. Although I'm not sure I wanted to go right after Carlo with his really cool presentation and wonderful personal stories and pictures, but also very pleased to meet a lot of the JES leaders here and members who I haven't had a chance to meet previously. As Andrew said, I come from the private sector. I'm sitting in the MetLife building here in New York today, and having just come back from working 16 years for MetLife and AIG in Japan, and still feeling a very close personal connection to the country, and still having many friends there. I felt that I was recruited to join the board of CIE last year, and ultimately to take on the role from Jamie in January. And I felt I kind of owe a debt of gratitude to Japan, and I want to help maintain that close connection between the two countries. Now, for those of you who are less familiar with CIE and the Manjiro Whitfield CIE Center for International Exchange, of course, the namesake is based on one of the earliest known grassroots exchanges between the U.S. and Japan, which is the Japanese sailor Manjiro being rescued by Captain William Whitfield in the Pacific, being brought back to the U.S. In 1841, and having been educated as a young sailor, or really a 14-year-old boy, I think at the time, after spending time in the U.S., going back and being one of the early ambassadors and influencers of the relationship between the U.S. and Japan, just at the time that the official diplomatic relations that were alluded to earlier with Commodore Perry opening Japan happened. So that's the namesake of the organization. And the mission really is to continue to build relationships at that grassroots level, obviously through both the act of hosting summits in collaboration with NAJAS and all the JAS members, and in every other years recruiting among the member population, among your members, to attend summits in Japan. And I think, it's amazing when I saw the statistic. These have been going on for 30 years. And although typically the participants, the people going and doing homestays at these grassroots summits are between 100 and 200 people, including all the host families and volunteers and other folks participating, this has touched more than 53,000 people, right, who have gotten a deeper appreciation for the relationship between our two countries. And so, how do we execute this, and how does CIE US fit in along with NAJAS and the Japan America Societies? I think the way we like to talk about it is a interlocking triangle, right? The three are supporting each other to, oh my goodness, it's Larry Greenwood. Hi, Larry. Good to see you. One of my old Japan colleagues. I was very surprised to see you after so many years. The three working together in collaboration, Andrew sits on the board of CIE, and of course NAJAS works with us to find and work with a JAS society to be the host of the annual meetings, and that arrangement has been going on since 2011, and we've had great summits in North Texas, San Diego, Atlanta, Seattle, and most recently in Columbus. And we want to show our appreciation to JASCO in Columbus for their support for the 2023 summit. And we have both, we have Marie Noda, who's a board member, of course, Seth, who are instrumental in that. And so far, also want to thank many of you and the JS societies who have helped us start to get the message out about this year's summit in Japan, in Wakayama, to many of your members. And I'll have an ask for you as part of my discussion here later about how we want to continue to promote and recruit folks for this year's summit. And look, we're looking, I think Kurt and Carlo's presentations are very interesting to me, and we're looking for ways where we can find synergies or connect to the overall push and promotion of travel to Japan this year. So we really want to focus on the outbound part of the discussion here to Wakayama. And look, this is new to me. The summit experience is new to me. I've done a lot of travel in Japan within the country as I was living there. I also witnessed the huge ramp up in tourism that happened under the Abe administration. I think from 5 million a year to at the peak, it was 35 or 40 million per year they were targeting, right? But obviously, a lot of very brief travel and a lot of travel focusing on Tokyo and Kyoto. The summits are very different in the sense that I think they're more of a cultural exchange and a deeper exchange and experience because they include communities which tourists may not typically go to, and a much closer connection to local families and an opportunity to form friendships and better and deeper understanding of the local community. And I think they are a great way to anchor or connect to other types of tourism. If you look at our Wakayama program, in some ways, it's very modular. There's a core, summit, and there are follow-on activities. And we've also seen JAS societies that are able to promote these and with their own additional programs to really stimulate interest among their members and going as a group to these. So overall, there's opportunities to, I think, get a critical mass of interest and to engage and energize your members and interest them in outbound travel to Japan. I think the currency point that Carlo made earlier is a great one, especially in terms of the affordability of the travel. So we're looking to continue to get your support in promoting this across your members, and also in looking for ways to collaborate with DOC or Sister Cities International looking for synergies in their push to stimulate outbound travel to Japan. So I'm very happy to be here today to talk to you about that. Maybe briefly, I'm going to attempt to share the brochure we have and talk just for a few moments about Wakayama. I'm sorry, I'm on my iPad because my MetLife computer would not allow me to share. I don't know if everybody see my screen?
Not yet, Dimitri.
Not yet.
Not yet. Try again. Oh, I had to start broadcast. Apologies. All right. Can everybody see
There we go.
screen?
Yep.
All right. So look, for this year's program, we have, I think, a couple things I wanted to highlight. First, we're in the process actively registering the participants. And again, thanks to those of you who have echoed the message across your member base. We have, I believe, 35 to 38 registered folks right now, and we're targeting to get up to 100. The early registration deadline for the early bird special deadline is February 29th. So Kurt, Carlo, if you want to go back to Japan and join, please get your checkbook out. And of course, the final registration deadline is May 15th. The program, as you can see here, the core program runs from the people arriving the 9th, but really the activities are from the 10th to the 14th with a departure date of the 15th. And there are many options within Wakayama. There are several different itineraries or selections you can make. And then there are also multiple follow-on homestays or visits that have been organized and added on as options. The cost of the program is quite reasonable, but includes the hotel and the activities, although folks are expected to arrange their own transportation to get to Japan. So that's pretty much what I had in terms of my planned remarks. I'm happy to, let me see if I can stop sharing. Happy to provide I think many of you have already received the brochure. Happy to provide the link to it. I think we're going to try to share it in the chat later, or as a follow-on to this meeting.
Great, Dimitri. Thank you for that presentation. Thank you for joining the organization and bringing your leadership to it. Yes, a lot of us are familiar, of course, with the relationship. We had a wonderful presentation on the Wakayama Summit at our annual meeting that several on this call were able to see, but it's great to know what the status is. And I think the important linkage on the outbound side is to think of this as cultural exchange, but also a way to develop your links in the travel and tourism space. And a lot of our societies can use this opportunity to interest their members in having this experience and then grow that into other activities. It's also a nice opportunity to look at that outbound side, because most of the JAS, Japan Society interaction with CIE, revolves around the incoming. And as you know, of course, 6 or 7 of our societies, starting with North Texas back in, what was that, maybe 2012, have been great hosts. But there's 2 sides of this coin, inbound and outbound. And of course, you brought us back to Western Japan with the focus on Wakayama. This was a great opportunity then to look at this topic from 3 different levels. We got the binational government umbrella, a broad program, and then one specific, very deep and narrow program in the grassroots summits and those exchanges. If there's any interest in the speakers exchanging questions, that would be really interesting. How do we tie these different initiatives together? So please, speakers, feel free to have at each other with questions. But otherwise, we'll be turning to the group for questions from the floor, and just for our speakers in particular. Correct me, folks, if I'm missing societies, but we have Washington, D.C., a pair of NCs, both Japan Society, Northern California, who hosted a wonderful event that I had the privilege of attending last night, and JAS North Carolina as well as a duo. Carlo mentioned Becky Callahan, our new director in Dallas, Fort Worth, of course, Hawaii and Indiana. So I think that's our geographic spread, if I didn't miss anybody. Why don't I turn it over to questions again, speaker to speaker, audience to speakers, please. The floor is everybody's.
Oh.
I see Ryan's got a hand up.
Yeah, should I go?
Or Kurt, did you have something you wanted to?
No, definitely Ryan, go first.
All right. It took me a long time to figure out how to put up my hand, and now I have no clue how to get it back down. So forgive me in advance. But okay, so I think Kurt, this is directed mostly at you. Although I had a couple of reactions. One is for Carlo. Appreciate your serving the role. I was a Jet. Probably many of us were Jets on the call. Funny enough, I volunteered to go to my sister state relationship, Maine to Aomori, and the Jet program sent me to Aichi. So there you go. Evidently, too many people requesting Aomori. That must have been it, right? And here in DC, we're slightly saddened. The society had put together an effort to create a sister city relationship between DC and somewhere. But our city wasn't interested. I think maybe a little bit of arrogance, basically feeling like people come to Washington D.C. anyway. Why do we need this? But on the bilateral level and the U.S.-Japan tourism year, I'm hoping that this statement or question is pertinent to others on the call. My guess is it is, but. We put on in DC the Sakura Matsuri Japanese Street Festival, which is a massive, massive collection of Americans, 40,000 people from our community that come out. And basically, almost 100% of them want to go to Japan. And so we actually put on a tourism exhibit at the festival, designed really to exercise or flex some of the muscles that I think are unique to the Japan America Society community, and that is namely to connect to folks on the local level, to get people thinking about Japan outside of the kind of tropes of Tokyo and Kyoto. So, and specifically, if people want to go to Japan, we want to tell them where to go and what to do, and maybe how to go somewhere else other than Tokyo and Kyoto. I've gotten zero traction from the Japanese tourist industry, including some of the partners that you listed. Some had supported this event in the past and decidedly did not support this year of all years, and have been pulling out of other similar events that I'm aware of that they normally fund. So I don't know. I wonder if you have any insight on what's going on exactly, because typically I would think this kind of campaign and this kind of year would really grease the wheels on some of the organizations that you mentioned on the Japanese side, opening up their wallets and saying, yep, this is going to be our year to put the logo on this one and put some of our resources behind it. But that's not what we've been seeing. We've been seeing quite exactly the opposite. Hopefully that's not too vague for you to be able to comment on, but do you have any insight or thoughts on what's going on?
Not really. I think our hope is exactly the opposite, that this would spur additional enthusiasm and investment in the various projects. I think if I were to speculate, I would say that we have not done as good a job. So thank you for your help on this call, for getting us more exposure for this program, for this project. It didn't get a lot of media pickup. Possibly there are folks who aren't aware, which could be a factor. So the more we can all collectively do to cross promote each other's work, the better we can do. And I think the dollar may be a factor as well, but I'm not sure about that. But it's exactly the opposite of what we want to happen. So thanks for the feedback, but hoping that we can stimulate it more in the other direction.
And then follow on, is it fair to assume that the Japanese focus will be inbound Japanese tourism, the American focus will be inbound from Japan tourism to the US?
Well, structurally for the US side, we are bound by being in the International Trade Administration to focus on exports, which is inbound travel and spending. The Japan side has a specific remit within the Japan Tourism Agency to focus on outbound and inbound, and they actually have funding to support outbound. They're supporting passports and things because people didn't travel for a while, and so they're now trying to spur outbound travel as well as getting inbound travel. And one of their goals, as in our national strategy, is to support travel beyond the gateway. So they're very much looking at dispersing travel throughout the country. We are as well, realizing that people will come in to LA or wherever they're traditional, but we want them to explore as much of America as they feel comfortable.
Yeah, great. Okay,
But
thank
travel
you.
patterns have changed. People are, what would have been empty nesters traveling isn't so much anymore. It's young people. Things change as we go on. And so we'll be working with the destinations marketing organizations that are represented in Japan to see what intel do they have, how are they tackling the same issues of how to get people to come.
Kurt, in terms of that promotion, could you just spend a moment talking about the logo, how we can, as societies, get the word out further?
Exactly. I put the link. It is available from Brand USA, which is housed. It is not permission based, so you can just go in and grab it. Use it responsibly, of course. That shouldn't have to be said, but we always sort of say that anyway. And let us know if I should put my email address in here as well, so that you can just let us know its use. That's all we're asking. JADA is distributing it in Japan, and it is permission based in Japan through JADA. I don't have the link for that, but the use is quite broad. It's not just tourism per se, cultural exchanges, student exchanges. There are lots of things that fall under the travel umbrella that would be perfectly useful to use in this regard, and just encouraging its use among your members for individual activities. It doesn't have to be a big broad-based program. Individual activities. I know Houston has used it on a couple or three things already. All of that's well and good. Just plop it in there as you see fit.
Thanks for that, Kurt. And it's sort of on that beat of how we can instrumentally tomorrow, today, start working together. I wonder if I could put Carlo on the spot to talk about a joint project that involves many, many organizations, and that's our calendaring opportunity. Carlo, could you give a little spin on that?
Sure. Kurt mentioned how can we cross promote, because so many of you are doing such good work and planning some really great events. So this is what we've put together, is working with the Department of Commerce and with Andy. And we put together, this is an attempt to put together a list of all the large US-Japan related events by date. And so you can see they're all listed with the date, who's putting it on, where, and then information about it. So you can see these are all, there's a happens to be a Japanese garden conference in Fort Worth coming in a couple weeks, which is kind of cool. That just kind of came out of nowhere. And let's say, oh, look at this. The 31st Japan America Grassroots Summit in Wakayama. How did that get on there? Well, that's such an important, that's something we definitely want to promote. And we're also putting the direct link so people can go in and register. So this is all the way through the year until the summit that I talked about in mid-September 2025. I'm going to put the link in the chat, and that way you can see it here. And if you have anything, again, these are for larger events that are open to many people. We're trying to keep it to just a really solid list, but keep that, share it with other people, and let's help cross promote all these great events that we're planning.
Thanks for that, Carlo. You mentioned that point. We had a little bit of back and forth about what should go on there. And I was just prior to San Francisco, I was in Houston, and we did that wonderful petroleum club talk with the former chair of TEPCO, Hirose-san. But to my take, that wouldn't be an event in the year of tourism. Other than Hirose-san, I don't think there was any travel. It was a Japan-related event. I think we have, and those calendars are wonderful, and we should keep those. And I'd love for NAJAS and our network to be a part of more broad calendars. But I think for our purposes here, I'd encourage folks to really focus on those 50 or more people. It's Trans-Pacific travel is either the topic and that we're talking about in the event, or you're talking about any vertical topic, but you're moving people. So that would be my personal take on it. Maybe other opinions on how we can build and use this, but I wanted to offer that. Other questions? I'm doing too much of the talking. What's brewing out in the field? And excuse me, I left off the fine folks at Japan American Society Kentucky, who started this whole travel business. Amy Sue and David. Excuse me for that oversight. But back over to any questions. Oh, do we have North Carolina?
Hi,
Yep.
yes. So, Andy, I think it was you who mentioned Expo ambassadors. What is that?
That would be another one back over to Carlo. This is an exciting opportunity connected with the Expo next year.
So it looks like we've got 3 minutes left. I'll take 60 seconds. That big picture I showed with all of the pavilions in the World Expo. So the USA will have one of those pavilions. It'll be really big. And so the USA will be recruiting young people between the ages of 20 and 24. They'll need about 85 of them to be like the concierge, the tour guides for people, for guests in the USA Expo. So we have put in a bid, Sister Cities has put in a bid to be in charge of recruiting all 85 of those young people. They would be from all around the country. So if we end up winning the bid, we will need your help. We would need to find young people between the ages of 20 and 24 who are interested and available to spend either 3 or 6 months in Japan, living, working, being paid every day at the Expo. We will also need to find cultural performing groups and speakers that represent the United States of America to perform at different times in the Expo. So if we win the bid, I'll do my happy dance, and then I'll reach out to Andy, and he will send you all a little more information. But we'd love to spread that and share that information to all of your networks in your communities to get our best and brightest to represent the USA in 2025.
Just to add quickly onto that Expo, the US Expo is going to be the first thing people encounter when they go in the gates, as I understand it, which is very exciting. The State Department has funding to do quite a bit, which is a rarity. Usually at these events, they have to go out and beg money, but they have money this year, which is fantastic. That Congress gave them, I think, like 65 million or something unbelievable. And the 4 themes are going to be natural, travel, education, and space. And they've got some really cool things planned. So I think everybody should try and get over to Osaka during the World Expo and see what the Expo is, the US pavilion is going to look like this year. It's going to be really exciting.
That's great, Kurt. Thank you for that. We got a touch on one of Carlo's signature projects. Maybe we'll bring it back to one of Dimitri's. and maybe put you on the spot, Kurt. And that call last week, the update that you helped us with, along with Carlo, we may have touched on the inbound side of the CIE Grassroots Summit Enterprise. Dimitri, did you mention that we have Philadelphia stepping up to host in 2026?
That's right.
Very, very exciting 250 anniversary there. But I know that we are still canvassing, as we were at Columbus when we were all together for our annual meeting, for a host for 2025. This is a wonderful cultural exchange and an inbound tourism promotion. So Kurt, if you have thoughts, we could follow up with you later about finding a community that would be in a good position to host 80, 100 Japanese coming over at about this time next year. That would be fantastic help. We'd appreciate it.
Yeah, Andrew, if I could briefly follow up. So normally we would have the inbound, a US summit next year, as we have Wakayama this year, but Philadelphia is hosting in 2026 to coincide, very rightfully with the 250-year anniversary. So next year we sort of have a gap, and we want to make sure that we continue to really have momentum with the summits. But given the timing, we probably want to manage our ambitions and have maybe something smaller scale. So we're trying to talk to the various jazz societies about their potential interest in hosting a reduced scale summit in the US. And so, yeah, any particular thoughts from a sister cities perspective or DOC perspective would be very welcome on that.
And we have Dan on the call. Hawaii might be a very interesting option of a smaller scale midway kind of event. So plenty to follow up on. This was a really rich discussion coming at it from different angles. We could have used another hour. I want to very sincerely thank all three gentlemen for their time in joining, and all of the JAS leaders for joining in.
And Chika at now 4 o'clock in the morning.
Incredible. Thank you so much. Get back to sleep if we haven't ruined completely the night's rest. We will save the chat information and be sharing that. And as mentioned, a recording of this will head up to our new YouTube site where all the rest of these NAJAS share sessions are. The next one coming up, Niles, our new fellow at NAJAS, is going to share, I think if he can, in the last seconds, a flyer for a really neat talk that could energize the membership base of a lot of JAS. There's an outfit called Grouper that's going to speak to us. Niles, can you share that flyer, the date?
I'm sharing the registration link now, but I can share it with the flyer with everyone post meeting. It's not letting me share the flyer for some reason, but
the basic idea is to use a health insurance benefit that can subsidize important membership opportunities, such as a JS membership fee. It's a pretty neat idea, and so we're going to try it out on the network on our next call. But tourism is the theme. It's not going away. Let's work hard on it throughout the year. Thanks again for everybody's participation. And with that, if there's any last thoughts, we'll wrap up here.